Once upon a time, in a lush green meadow, there lived a grasshopper named Gary and a frog named Jim Bob. Gary and Jim Bob were the best of friends, always up to mischief, always laughing, and always eating. They loved to eat, especially when it came to broccoli. They found it delicious, nutritious, and, well, let's just say a little bit gassy. One fine afternoon, Gary and Jim Bob decided to have a special lunch. They hopped and leaped to the local Chinese food restaurant, a little place by the pond that served the tastiest food in all the meadow. Gary ordered the broccoli and rice. Jim Bob went for the broccoli and noodles. They both ate until their bellies were full, and as they finished, they felt a rumble in their tummies. The broccoli, you see, was a bit too powerful for their little bellies. "Well," said Gary, giving his belly a pat, "I feel like a little toot coming on." Jim Bob rubbed his froggy belly and grinned. "I've got the same feeling. Let's head to the library and relax with a good book." So they hopped on over to the Meadows Library, where books about bugs, ponds, and everything in between filled the shelves. The library was always peaceful, and the librarian, Ms. Owl, kept everything neat and quiet. But as soon as Gary and Jim Bob stepped through the door, things started to go a little wrong. Gary let out a mighty fart so loud that the books on the shelves wobbled. Jim Bob, who had just taken a big breath of air, let out a giant burp that echoed through the library like thunder. Ms. Owl looked over her glasses, her feathers ruffling in shock. "What in the world is going on?" Before she could say another word, Gary let out another and Jim Bob followed with another. The two friends looked at each other and started to giggle. "I think we might have had a bit too much broccoli," Gary said between giggles. "I think the whole library heard it," Jim Bob replied, still chuckling. But the giggles quickly turned into more toots, burps, and gassy noises. The books on the shelves rattled and swayed, and a few even fell to the floor. It wasn't long before Ms. Owl's patience wore thin. "Gary, Jim Bob, you're causing a racket in my library. You're a public nuisance." "But we didn't mean to," Jim Bob said, trying to keep his froggy laugh under control. "I'm afraid I'm going to have to call the authorities," Ms. Owl said firmly. Before they knew it, Officer Squirrel and Officer Rabbit arrived, arms crossed, looking very serious. "Gary the gassy grasshopper and Jim Bob the frog," Officer Squirrel announced. "You are under arrest for making too much noise, disturbing the peace, and creating a health hazard in the library. Farting and burping are not allowed in here." But we only had a bit too much broccoli at lunch," Gary protested. "Too much broccoli?" Officer Rabbit raised an eyebrow. "We're going to have to take you in." And so Gary and Jim Bob were handcuffed with tiny leaves and escorted to the town jail. As they sat in their cell, they couldn't help but laugh at the situation. "Well," Gary said, "this is a fine mess we've gotten ourselves into." "Yep," Jim Bob agreed, "but at least we're in here together, and the window is open." The two friends spent the afternoon in jail, laughing about the library incident. They realized maybe they'd need to be a little more careful with their broccoli next time. As the sun began to set, the mayor, who happened to be a wise old turtle, came to visit them. "Gary, Jim Bob, you've caused quite the commotion today, but you've also brought a lot of joy with your giggles and laughs. I think we can let you go this time." Gary and Jim Bob jumped up in joy. "We promise to be quieter next time," Gary said. "And no more broccoli," Jim Bob added with a wink. "Very well," the mayor chuckled, "but just remember, a little less gas and a little more class." And so Gary and Jim Bob were released from jail and promised to be more careful with their meals. From that day on, whenever they visited the library, they made sure to keep their burps and farts to a minimum, and they never, ever had broccoli with their lunch again. Well, at least not without a little more caution.